Are you tired of the noise, the pressure, and the endless race to keep up? Because if you're between 55 and 75 years old, this might just be the message you didn't know you needed. In today's world where speed is praised and consumption is constant, choosing to slow down almost feels rebellious. But here's the truth: real peace, lasting joy, and deep fulfillment often begin the moment you decide to step off that treadmill. After more than a decade of working closely with older adults, I've seen a powerful shift happen again and again. When people choose to live more intentionally and spend less, they gain more than they ever expected: clarity, calm, and a renewed sense of purpose. This video isn't about sacrifice. It's about freedom. It's about trading the clutter, the busyness, and the pressure for stillness, simplicity, and meaning. And at minute 340, I'll share a personal story that forever changed how I see aging, and it might just shift something in you too. So if you believe life can be beautiful without being busy, go ahead and like this video, subscribe for more thoughtful conversations like this, and tell me in the comments, what would you be willing to let go of to feel lighter today? Now, let's begin with the first mindset shift that gently leads us toward a life that's slower, simpler, and so much richer. Compass and Idung CHNH, 12 by Hak Tu Loy Song Cham. Reevaluating consumerism in later years. Over the years, many of us bought into the idea that more is better: more clothes, more gadgets, more upgrades. It was what society told us. Success meant owning things. But somewhere along the way, we began to feel tired. Not physically, but emotionally drained by the chase. With time and wisdom, we start to question, do we really need all this? As someone who has worked closely with older adults for over a decade, I can tell you, this is a common realization. Many seniors I've met have told me the same thing. I spent decades building a life around stuff, only to find out it didn't make me happier. In our later years, we're gifted with clarity. We see through the noise of advertising and the pressure to keep buying. We recognize that joy doesn't come from a full shopping cart, but from a full heart. The good news is, it's never too late to change. And once we see the truth, it becomes easier to let go. Letting go of the pressure to have more is often the first step toward feeling lighter and living more fully. So where do we begin? Sometimes it starts with something as simple and powerful as clearing out the clutter. 2. Clearing out clutter, a personal journey. For many of us, clutter isn't just about objects. It's about emotion, memory, and identity. Years ago, I worked with a retired teacher who was downsizing after living in the same house for 45 years. Her garage was filled with old lesson plans, boxes of unused kitchenware, and decorations from holidays long past. Letting go wasn't easy, but as she gradually released what she no longer needed, she began to smile more. She told me, "It feels like I'm making space, not just in my home, but in my mind." I've seen this time and again. When we clear physical clutter, we often lighten emotional weight too. Even if you're not moving, try going through just one closet or one kitchen drawer this week. Start small. You might be surprised how freeing it feels. This isn't about minimalism for its own sake. It's about reclaiming space for what truly matters. You don't need 5 coffee makers or stacks of unread magazines to feel secure. You need peace, clarity, and room to breathe. Simplifying your surroundings can gently quiet the mind, and that is a gift we all deserve at this stage in life. But what about the world we live in, a world that constantly tells us to buy more? That's where we need to step back and ask, what kind of relationship do we really want to have with capitalism? 3. Selective spending, not against the system, just living smarter. I don't believe we need to fight the system, we just need to understand it better so we're not unconsciously swept up in it. Capitalism, when balanced, can offer real value. A baker deserves to be paid for making a good loaf of bread. That's fair. But after a decade of working with older adults, I've seen how the problem isn't what we buy, it's why we buy. We've been conditioned to believe that our happiness depends on having the newest gadget, the most stylish wardrobe, or the next big thing. But ask yourself, when was the last time something you bought truly brought you lasting joy? One gentleman I worked with, age 68, once told me, "I used to shop out of fear of falling behind. Now, I spend with purpose, and it feels like freedom." That's the key. When you spend with awareness, you're not rejecting the system, you're simply choosing how to engage with it on your terms. You're not a passive consumer. You're an active participant. Selective spending is powerful because it protects your peace, your energy, and your sense of control. Still, living more simply in today's fast-paced world isn't always easy. So next, let's talk about how to embrace simplicity, even when the world around you seems endlessly complex. 4. living simply in a complex world. Let's be honest, living simply in today's world can feel like swimming upstream. When everyone around you is rushing, scrolling, upgrading, and buying, choosing to slow down and own less can make you feel like an outsider. But here's what I've learned after working with older adults for over a decade. Those who embrace simplicity often experience something truly profound, a return to themselves. They start to notice life again. The sound of wind rustling through the trees, the gentle rhythm of their own breath, the warmth of sunlight on their face. These are not luxuries. They're truths we often overlook when we're chasing what we don't really need. One woman I worked with once said, "When I stopped trying to keep up, I finally caught up with myself." That stuck with me. Simplicity doesn't mean deprivation. It means intention. It means making space for what actually matters: relationships, rest, presence. And while yes, some friends or family might not understand at first, over time, your peace will speak for itself. It will show in how you move, how you speak, and how deeply you smile. And it's in those quiet, grounded moments that we rediscover something beautiful, the joy found in the smallest things. Let's explore that next. 5. Appreciating the little things. As we grow older, our definition of joy often begins to shift. The grand, flashy experiences that once thrilled us may no longer hold the same appeal. Instead, we start finding happiness in the simplest of moments: the warmth of a morning cup of tea, the quiet presence of a loved one, or the beauty of birds fluttering outside the window. In my years working with seniors, I've seen this change happen naturally. One gentleman, a retired postman, once told me, "These days, nothing feels better than sitting on my porch and watching the world go by. I used to think that was wasting time. Now I know it's time well spent." And he's right. When we step away from the noise of consumerism, we begin to hear life again. Gardening, journaling, picking up a dusty old hobby, even simply sitting in silence. These acts, though small, are rich in meaning. They give us back what material things often take away: presence, connection, peace. The best part? These moments are usually free. But even with this growing appreciation, we're still human. And sometimes, the pull of consumption sneaks back in, through a sale, a screen, a fleeting desire. So next, let's talk honestly about resisting that temptation and reclaiming our peace. 6. Resisting the pull of consumerism. Let's face it, even when we choose to live more simply, consumerism doesn't just vanish. It lingers. It waits in the form of a tempting online ad, a limited time sale, or that little emotional itch that says, maybe just one more thing. Over the years, I've worked with many older adults who told me the same story. They didn't need more, but the urge to buy still crept in. And that's okay. You're not weak. You're human. These systems were designed to trigger that response. But here's the good news. Just like any habit, the impulse to spend can be unlearned. Start small. Try going one day without buying anything. Then 2. Then a week. One client of mine kept a small notebook by the front door, and every time she resisted buying something, she wrote it down and celebrated it like a tiny victory. "I didn't buy the blender," she once told me, laughing. And guess what? I already had one. With time and awareness, these small wins add up, and your craving to consume fades. Not because you're depriving yourself, but because you're filling that space with something better: contentment. And speaking of space, what do we do with all the extra time, energy, and room we create when we stop chasing things? Let's talk about filling that space with meaning, not more stuff. 7. Filling the void with meaningful activities. When we begin to spend less and let go of unnecessary clutter, something remarkable happens. We create space. Space in our homes, yes, but also in our minds, our schedules, and our spirits. The question is, what will we do with that space? This is where so many older adults I've worked with find new purpose. Some take up creative hobbies they never had time for: painting, woodworking, writing poetry. Others rediscover the joy of walking every morning, feeding the birds, or calling an old friend just to chat. One woman, a 74-year-old former nurse, began volunteering at a local library and said, "I thought I was giving time, but what I got in return was tenfold." That's the heart of it. When you stop filling your life with things, you start filling it with meaning. And no, these don't have to be grand gestures. Sometimes meaning shows up in the smallest places: in baking cookies with your grandchildren, in writing letters, or in sharing your life lessons with someone younger who needs to hear them. When your hands are no longer full of shopping bags, they're free to hold memories, connection, and joy. But let's be honest, living differently, even with purpose, doesn't always come easy. In the next part, we'll face the emotional and social challenges that can come with choosing a simpler, slower life. 8. The challenges of living differently. Choosing to live differently, slower, simpler, with more intention, can be one of the most rewarding decisions you'll ever make. But let's be honest, it isn't always easy. Over the years, I've spoken with many older adults who said the hardest part wasn't changing their habits. It was dealing with how others reacted. Friends may not understand why you're not upgrading your car or booking extravagant vacations. Family might question why you're downsizing or skipping gift-giving holidays. Some even wonder if you've given up. But in truth, you've simply chosen to live with clarity, not clutter. And that takes courage. There's also the internal voice we all carry, the one shaped by decades of cultural conditioning, whispering that worth equals wealth or that stillness means stagnation. Shifting away from that mindset can be uncomfortable at first. You might feel moments of doubt or isolation. That's normal. But here's the truth I've seen again and again. The longer you live in alignment with your values, the lighter your spirit becomes. Peace replaces pressure. Gratitude softens fear. And eventually, the discomfort of living differently fades, replaced by the deep satisfaction of living authentically. And as we begin to find stability in this new rhythm of life, we also begin to notice something else, the quiet freedom that comes with financial clarity. Let's explore that next. 9. Financial freedom through simplicity. One of the most overlooked benefits of simple living is the powerful sense of financial freedom it brings. When we stop buying things we don't need, we stop working to support a lifestyle that doesn't truly fulfill us. Over the past decade, I've seen countless older adults tell me the same thing. I don't need as much as I thought I did. And that realization changed everything. With fewer expenses comes less stress. You no longer feel pressured to chase a paycheck, maintain a large home, or keep up with trends that no longer resonate with your values. Instead, your money goes where it truly matters, to your health, your relationships, your peace of mind. One man in his early 70s shared with me how cutting unnecessary spending allowed him to travel twice a year to see his grandchildren, something he thought he couldn't afford. Another woman used her savings from downsizing to join a yoga class and invest in better nutrition. That's what simplicity does. It redirects your resources toward what gives back, not what just takes up space. And as you experience this new freedom, you may find yourself looking back, not with regret, but with gratitude. Let's talk next about reflecting on your life's journey with fresh eyes and a lighter heart. 10. Reflecting on life's journey. As we grow older, reflection becomes not just natural, but necessary. With the quiet that comes from living simply, we finally have space to look back on the path we've walked. And what we often find is this: it wasn't the big purchases or fancy milestones that shaped us. It was the moments in between. A shared laugh at the dinner table, a letter received at just the right time, a small act of kindness that still warms your heart decades later. In my years working with seniors, I've heard this sentiment repeated more times than I can count. I don't remember everything I bought, but I remember the people, the lessons, the feelings. When you live more intentionally, you begin to see your life not as a collection of things, but as a tapestry of meaning. Even the mistakes, even the losses, they become part of a story worth honoring. And here's the truth: it's never too late to rewrite how we relate to our past. We don't need to carry shame or regret. We can carry wisdom, grace, and perspective. And as we reflect, we often begin to wonder, not just how we've lived, but what we'll leave behind. That brings us to something deeper, the legacy of simplicity. Let's talk about that next. 11. Leaving a legacy of simplicity. As we move further into the later chapters of life, many of us begin to wonder, what will we leave behind? Not in terms of property or possessions, but in presence. What values did we live by? What quiet lessons will our children and grandchildren carry forward? In my work with older adults, I found that the most meaningful legacies aren't written into wills, they're lived out daily. It's the way you chose simplicity over chaos, presence over pressure. It's the way you listened, gave without expectation, and found joy in the little things. One woman I met, who had very few material assets, told me something I'll never forget. I may not leave them money, but I'm leaving them peace, because they've seen me live with it. That's powerful. Living simply doesn't just change your life, it echoes beyond you. It teaches younger generations that life isn't measured by what we accumulate, but by how we show up, with kindness, calm, and clarity. And long after we're gone, those values remain like quiet ripples on a still lake. But even the most meaningful legacy requires something we can't afford to ignore: our health. So in our final section, let's talk about why prioritizing well-being is the foundation for everything else. 12. Prioritizing health and well-being in the slow life. In the rush of modern life, it's easy to let health take a back seat. But when we slow down, truly slow down, we finally have the time and space to listen to our bodies. We notice when we're tired, when we need movement, when we're craving nourishment, not just food, but rest, stillness, sunlight, connection. One of the greatest gifts of the slow life is that it allows us to prioritize our well-being, not as a luxury, but as a daily practice. I've seen older adults transform their energy and mindset by doing something as simple as taking daily walks, eating more mindfully, or creating space for quiet reflection. And research supports this. Spending time in nature lowers blood pressure, improves mental clarity, and reduces stress. Whether it's gardening, gentle stretching, or just sitting with a warm cup of tea while listening to the birds, these small acts of care add up. Health isn't only about medical checkups. It's about how we live between the appointments. It's about honoring the body that's carried us through so much and nurturing the mind that continues to grow. So if you're in this chapter of life, 55, 65, or 75, know this: slowing down isn't falling behind. It's catching up with what matters most. And that is the most powerful step you can take toward a life that feels whole, wise, and beautifully your own. Choosing to live a slower, simpler life isn't always easy, but it might be the bravest, most rewarding decision you'll ever make. In a world that constantly urges us to do more, buy more, and move faster, slowing down can feel like rebellion. But as we've explored together in this video, it's in the stillness that we begin to feel again, to hear our own thoughts, to remember what really matters. Simplicity isn't about living with less. It's about living with more clarity, more peace, and more connection to the people and moments that make life beautiful. If you found even one insight today that made you pause and reflect, I invite you to take the next small step. Whether it's clearing a drawer, taking a mindful walk, or simply sitting still for a few minutes and breathing deeply. And if this message resonated with you, please consider giving this video a like. Subscribe to the channel for more thoughtful content like this, and share in the comments what's one thing you're ready to let go of to make room for something better? Because life isn't about racing to the finish line, it's about fully living each step of the way. And sometimes, the most powerful way forward is to slow down.